I want you to notice this is going to be a team oral. And in fact, there are as many as 3 students can deliver an oral. And 3 students would get 30 minutes. These 2 students will have a maximum of 20 minutes, and we give them again a minute's grace. So again, after 20 minutes, Rishi will call out 1 minute to go, and then we will have to stop them at 21. And then, of course, somebody might be kind enough to ask a question to enable them to say what they were going to say anyway. I thought that was a very, very good move until that.
Mark, we've got one gentleman who wants to play a video, so just going to set up some sound.
So that's not. So
that's not us.
That's not us. Just waiting to see that everybody's here. Okay, I think we'll make a start.
Alright, so our topic from today stems from our English classes with Miss Marshall. We were analysing the translated novel Perfume by Patrick Suskind. One of the key themes within the book is the dichotomy between scientific belief and religious belief, and this led to quite a large debate in class between people who were of the belief that scientific knowledge was more valuable than religious knowledge and vice versa. So both sides, or both people on both sides would often state that they know they were right. And this led us to believe, to question, well, how did they know? So we decided to question the religious aspect in terms of how can someone know that their specific religion is the truth, or whether or not this truth is merely an assumption. So this thought developed to the point where we questioned the validity of assumed truths themselves, leading us to our knowledge question. To what extent can the information provided by assumed truths be considered as knowledge?
Now let's just break that question down a little bit. We'll talk about assumed truths, information, and knowledge. An assumed truth is an idea or piece of information that someone claims to be true based on the factors surrounding them. Some common assumed truths include the belief in religion, the laws and properties of gravity, and the idea of social norms. We use these because if we can't prove something ourselves, then this kind of knowledge is only assumed based on the things that other people have told us. And just because society tells us something is correct doesn't necessarily make it true. Information is defined as facts provided or learned about something or someone. And knowledge is information that is obtained through the use of one or more valid ways of knowing. But what exactly is a way of knowing?
So ways of knowing are just that, ways in which knowledge can be obtained. They consist of language, memory, imagination, intuition, faith, emotion, sense perception, and reason. Now, the assumed truths we'll be talking about in our presentation are the assumed truth of religion and societal norms. I'll talk about this. The real-life situation we have for religion is something that's... You skipped.
Oh, did I?
Yeah, sorry. So we're going to break each religion and societal norms down into the ways of knowing which are implemented to understand them. So religion falls under the area of knowledge of religious knowledge systems, and the key ways of knowing we use when using religious information as knowledge is emotion and faith. And in regards to societal norms, it falls under the human sciences category, and the ways of knowing we use here are reason and sense perception.
Okay, apologies for the mistake, but now I'll talk about the real-life situation we have for religion as an assumed truth. This situation comes from me personally, someone that's very close to me, who's been atheist their entire life, has just decided to pick up religion, and I asked them why. They told me that they could feel God's presence, and they knew that he was real. Of course, I questioned this, because how can you know? They told me they had no real reasoning, but they just knew it.
So when people have faith, they feel that they know something. Faith can have many definitions, but generally can be considered to be trust or confidence in someone or something. But what causes faith? Let's take the example of a skydiver. They have faith that the parachute will allow them to land safely, but do they know this? They believe they do. So where does this come from?
An individual would most likely give one of 3 responses for the reason that they would have faith in a parachute working. One response would be that they've seen it happen before. They may have seen it on movies or seen it happen right in front of them. They could have a scientific explanation. They may have studied Da Vinci and his parachute. Or, for the third reason, they may have completed the action for themselves, which is not something I'd recommend. This faith is different to the faith experienced by those who follow a religion, as it actually follows a form of reasoning which differs from the definition of the word faith in a religious context. We will refine that definition properly a little later.
Does this mean in this circumstance faith is the wrong word to use? Can you really have faith when you jump out of an aeroplane that your parachute is going to open? Or is this itself reason? We are of the mind that this is more in fact reason than faith.
Now, as we said, we will do some definitions. So we define reason as a cause, explanation, or justification. It can also be defined as a verb, that being the power of the mind to think, understand, and form judgments logically. And we redefine faith, which is blind belief which does not necessarily rely on other aspects of knowledge.
Blind is suggestive that one does not need any external sources to possess faith. Basically, it suggests that there is knowledge without just cause or reason. This comes back to the situation of the anonymous person stating that they know God is real. They can't explain how he or she knows this, but they just say they do. As a side note, this demonstrates the effect language can have on our understanding of a situation. The invalidity of the word faith in the situation of the skydiver relates to people's use of language as a way of knowing. The misuse of language can often lead to misconceptions about knowledge.
So let's reevaluate faith as a way of knowing. Based on its redefinition, the use of faith as a way of knowing is limited to some extent, as it stems largely from blind belief, lacking support from other areas of knowledge such as reason and intuition. To this end, we can conclude that faith as an aspect of knowledge is not completely reliable as a way of knowing when used without the other ways of knowing. Thus, the fact that the information received from religion is based on mostly blind faith, it means it's limited, which is a limited way of knowing when not supported by reason or other key aspects of knowledge, may not be an entirely rational belief to have.
Next, we're going to briefly look at emotion. So, an emotion can be defined as a strong feeling deriving from one's circumstances, mood, or relationship with others. So, in a religious circumstance, emotion can be used to justify knowledge. But how valid is emotion as a way of knowing?
Now, emotion in itself is a very personal way of knowing. It's things that we know inside ourselves. For example, I'll save the example for a little later, but just because one person knows something based on their own personal emotion does not mean that other people consider it so. For example, I don't know how many of you watch soccer or are into that kind of thing, but there's a player called Robin van Persie, and now I hate him. I hate him because he plays for Manchester United, and I hate that team. They're the worst. I'm a Chelsea supporter. But Ray, as a very strong Manchester United supporter, he loves him because he loves Manchester United. Now, that's based off his emotion. His emotional knowledge is different from mine. So yeah, one's individual emotional knowledge is different from another's. Emotional knowledge is based on circumstance and can cloud judgment, and it can detract from knowledge based on other ways of knowing.
Just as a side note, I'm not actually a Manchester United fan. I don't want to get beaten after the session. So, through emotion, people can determine information received from within themselves, such as feelings and experiences, to be knowledge. However, they cannot use emotion to decipher external outcomes and events as pure knowledge due to the fact emotion resonates solely within ourselves, meaning it is a personal way of knowing.
So emotion and faith together, can they really mean justified knowledge? What if we combine these two ways of knowing? Do they justify each other? Let's look at another example. Your parents, in this example, are reaching the end of their lives. You desperately want to believe that they'll move on to a better place, such as heaven. Your love, as an emotion for your parents, leads you to turn to religion, or more specifically, the faith in religion as a truth, as a form of hope for their futures. However, can even this combination of emotion and faith in a religious sense be considered a valid means of truly knowing?
We can now consider faith as a limited way of truly knowing something when taken alone, as it is based on blind belief without a completely justifiable explanation. We can also consider emotion as a mostly personal form of knowledge, thus having limited validity in actually knowing things external to one's own mind. However, both can be considered a justification of one another. Those who have faith in religion are quite often emotionally attached and compelled to have this faith. Yet this does not completely validate religious knowledge, in the sense that both faith and emotion are incredibly subjective.
Now let's talk about societal norms, which is the other assumed truth we decided to discuss. Let's take an example of how societal norms can be used to form an opinion which is considered to be knowledge. If anyone walking down the street has a body covered in tattoos, many many establishments would not allow them to gain employment, as tattoos are associated with a lack of class and rebellious nature. Because of this, tattooed people are degraded in the eyes of employers and often in the general public.
So before we analyse this further, we're just briefly going to explain what human sciences entail. So societal norms fall under the category of human sciences. Human science is a study and interpretation of the experiences, activities, constructs and artefacts associated with human beings. And therefore, societal norms are an aspect of the human sciences as it relates to experience and activities associated with humans.
Now, one of the main ways of knowing associated with this specific situation is reason. Earlier, we defined reason. However, let's define it again, just to, re-establish the point. It's the power of the mind to think, understand, and form judgments logically. When a person uses logical reasoning and deduction, they claim that their beliefs are true and they are justifiable. Reason is a crucial way of knowing used in justifying scientific, mathematical, and social knowledge.
So to a degree, reasoning is a useful way of knowing, as it provides a supported judgment based on careful thought. However, there are limits to these justifications. Fallacies are a major limitation of reasoning as a way of knowing. For example, someone may say, our feet are round and we live on the earth, hence the earth must be round. However, this is completely flawed reasoning, as just because our feet are rounded on the bottom does not mean that the earth is round. Yet they still get the right conclusion anyway, showing the major flaws within reason itself.
Many different types of fallacies such as that exist, like bandwagoning, ad hoc, and the base rate fallacies, all of which depend on inherent